Okay, we're going to step through what is required to migrate from what is our V3 version onto the new SecurityTrax as it relates specifically to permissions. So if you see the screen that I have here now, if your login screen looks like this, then this video applies to you and you need to follow along and do the steps that I'm going to outline. If it looks like this, which is the previous V2 version, as we call it, of SecurityTrax, then there's nothing you need to do when you move to the new SecurityTrax. Your permissions will already be in place and ready to go. So what we want to do is there's a documentation link that is in your docs for the new SecurityTrax that has an article called Migrating Permissions to V3. And so you can hit your doc page, search for V3. This is the only entry that has V3 in it, and you'll be brought to this page. And we'll effectively be stepping down through this document here and showing you what you need to do to get these permissions moved over. So a couple of things. If you're using V3 only and you've never used V2, then you most likely will have no permissions set up and ready to go for the new SecurityTrax. If you've been using a hybrid approach, then any permissions that you set up in V2 will automatically be already present in the new SecurityTrax. So a couple things out the gate. The groups inside of the V3 version of SecurityTrax, and again as a reminder, that's the one that looks like this when you log in, has the notion of groups. And this chart that I'm showing here, this diagram rather, reflects kind of big picture what's changing between V3 and the new SecurityTrax. So inside of V3 you had permission groups here under groups, and you'll notice we've had 3 different groups. And if we go into a group like this, we would have selected what are the different roles that are there, and then who's in the group, and then ultimately we'll have a list here of the actual resources, if you will, that this particular group has access to. If we open one of these up, we're then going to see that there are what the term was grants before, which was effectively what are the permissions that are being allowed on each one of these resources. So again, we had these groups, and they had, let's just call it, all V3 style permissions associated with them. When you move to the new SecurityTrax, and that's what I'm showing here, those same groups will already exist. So the groups are there, they're called the same thing, all of that. The only difference is from the new SecurityTrax standpoint, they have not been yet assigned the permissions to them that need to be assigned to them. But you don't need to create new permission groups. You can just go into your existing groups, and we'll step through what exactly you need to do. But just know out the gate that when your new SecurityTrax is turned on, these groups are already going to be there. They're going to carry over. Effectively, if anybody in your organization goes to log into the new SecurityTrax, because their credentials will work, of course, all of that carries over, but they will not have any access because there have been no permissions granted to these groups, and they have not been assigned. The users haven't been assigned to these groups either. So going back to this document, zooming out big picture again, V3, you had a user would be assigned one group and only one group, and the group would carry the grants. So what the group might do, these were the view, create, modify, delete. Also what roles might be associated with that, i.e. can they be a sales rep, etc. And then we had this whole notion of policies and filters. And these could get pretty cumbersome because you could have the need for a lot of groups that were kind of defining the same thing but was just a little bit different. Whereas inside of the new SecurityTrax and what was in the V2 version of SecurityTrax, these groups would be, instead of assigned to only one per user, instead you would have the groups carry permissions and roles, and then you assign the group to a user in one or more locations. So basically this really expands out what the capabilities are and how fine-tuned of permissions you can easily and rapidly give to a group of people, especially if they have different roles or serve different um, you know, positions inside of different office locations inside of your organization. So you will see here in the new permission model, we've got the user, we have all these permission groups that we're going to set up and step through, and then we have the location, and the access is granted when these three things, effectively come together. So again, big picture, V3, we had a user would be assigned to one group. You would use policies and filters to kind of restrict down what locations they had access to and all of that. Whereas inside of the new SecurityTrax, a user is a member of a group in multiple locations. And so they can be a member of more than one group even in the same location. So anyway, it gives you way more flexibility and power really to fine-tune what access somebody has. So this document steps through in great detail what each of these things are that I'm describing and how they effectively work. If you step down through this document, the key things to understand are again, the group names come over. What was called grants are now the permission grid inside of the new SecurityTrax. Roles are effectively the same, handled the same way. Instead of creating policies and filters, you're just applying these groups on the users in one or more locations. So the good news, as it says, the work that remains, your group names are already there. What we need to do are these two things here. Each group needs its new SecurityTrax permission set, and we're going to walk through that in just a second. And each user needs their groups assigned at the right locations. So I'm going to step through this. I would recommend reading, through this document just to make sure you, fully understand, kind of what the migration process is here. The good news is that you can set these permissions up, and then you can use, it's outlined down here, the permission analyzer that allows you to, go through and really confirm that what you think you applied to a user is actually what they actually have applied. So for this demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and go into this V3 site for this migration security. You'll notice we had the sales rep group. I'm going to click into that. And then again, over in the new SecurityTrax, I'm on effectively what is the same page. I'm on permission groups and roles, and I'm seeing the sales rep group. I'm going to click into it, and you're going to notice here that we have, just some basic things about it. Same thing you would have seen in your previous version of SecurityTrax. We have a name, description, etc. And then here we have what all the different resources are, grouped into different buckets, right? So administrative type things, customers, leads, reports, this company-wide pages, roles and restrictions, schedulers, and the new SecurityTrax intelligence things. So what we'll do is if we come over to this group in V3 in sales reps, and let's just go into customers, and we will load this up, and we'll see these are all the things that the user currently has access to, right? And so these will carry over. So in name, pretty much one-to-one, but it's not exact, which is why we don't automatically do this, for you when you're migrating over. But we have customer abort code. They had view and modify. Customer billing, which is the payment methods, right? They had these different grants on that, particular group. And we'll notice if we come over here to the new SecurityTrax and we go to customers, we're going to have, very similar setup from the standpoint of we're seeing what the things are, the resources and the attributes, if you will, under each one of the resources that they will have access to, right? And so we can go down this list and we can see what areas that we want to apply the permissions to. So if we go ahead and we search for abort, here's the abort code, right? So this will match up with the other one. We're going to go ahead and say give them full control. This tells me exactly what that means. It means I have full access to it. I can see it in clear text, etc. We also had the billing methods we were looking at inside of V3. So I would come in here and I can just click this, and this will quickly give view, create, modify, delete on the billing methods. So for each one of these things, you can, there's this little info bubble that will tell you, what the item is and what it relates to. But you're effectively going to go through each one of your existing V3 groups and go through each one of these, resources here, administration, customers, leads, etc., and make sure that you are assigning the permissions that you want, available in the new SecurityTrax. And I would recommend, side-by-siding with this screen if you want. So open this up in one tab, and for example, customer files, and then come over here and search for files. And if that group had access to it before, go ahead and give it to them now if you want, or you can restrict as needed, or rather not grant that access if you want. So bottom line is we're going to come through and we're going to review all of the groups, make sure we have the permissions set the way that we want them, and then we're going to go ahead and hit save and stay, which will save those permissions. Now once we've done that, we can then go to our users and assign that group out. So here I'm going to go into this Justin Beckstrom, and I'm going to go to permission, groups, and roles, and you'll notice here, and you'll see this when you're migrating over as well, the user has no location or groups assigned. So you got a warning here that you have work to do. So we'll come into the permission, groups, and roles, and of course we have some tools to quick copy and things like that. But in this case, we have one office location, and we want him to be in the sales rep group, so we're going to click the office location to enable that location for him, and then we're just going to check sales rep and hit save. And now this particular user has the sales rep role permissions for the corporate office. And if we had more than one office, or we had multiple permission groups that we wanted him to be a part of inside of that one office location, we could go ahead and assign more than one. So there's all sorts of different ways you can approach this. We sometimes use the term of a leaf group, which might be something like that gives elevated permissions. And so you would create this group, and it really only grants like maybe one or two things that you don't typically assign or want assigned to the whole group. So for example, let's say we could have a group that was called access to sensitive fields, effectively, and then we could just go assign those permissions to that group. And then if we wanted Justin to have access inside the corporate office to the the things that group assigned, I would additionally check beyond sales rep for him, because he has elevated permissions that not all sales reps do, also this new group that would be elevated permissions. So anyway, this is the basic model. Like I mentioned, unfortunately there's no automated way for us to do this, since it's not an exact one-to-one mapping with how these permissions worked in V3 and in the new SecurityTrax. However, once you adopt this new permission set, we think you'll be very happy with it. It gives you a lot of control and the ability to lock things down in a way that just was not possible inside of V3. So anyway, review this doc. Again, inside of the new SecurityTrax, if you click on this help here and click SecurityTrax documentation home, it'll bring up the docs. And then on this page, I'm just going to go ahead and search for V3. This is the only match, and that's how I get to this page. So review that and reach out to our team if you have any questions. We are also doing events or live webinars. If you go to SecurityTrax.com, on the events page, you will notice that we have migrating to the new SecurityTrax courses, webinars that are happening regularly now. So you can come in, click into one of these, and reserve your spot, and you'll get the link and reminders and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, appreciate you. I know this is a little bit of a pain point to have to do this, but we've worked super hard to make sure that this will be worth it for you. The new SecurityTrax is the future of SecurityTrax, and we think you're really going to love it.